Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another exciting podcast interview. On today's show, I'm pleased to welcome back John Clavadetscher. He is the President and Chief Commercial Officer for Outsell, and today we're going to talk about the power of first-party data, how to activate it in a smart way, and how to turn your data into dollars. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's an honor to be back and partnering with you. So hope you, family, and your enterprises are well.
Yeah, we are excited because you are one of the companies that have invested in dealer education. You're going to be speaking at the Modern Retailing Conference coming up this week, and we are excited to really get a little preview of some of the highlights of what we're going to be talking about. For those of you who don't know John was at Cars.com for a number of years, left, and did some exciting work in consumer packaged goods and retail, and now back to lead the charge at Outsell. John, what did you learn in the consumer packaged goods and in just general retail marketing and branding that you're excited about that you brought back into automotive through Outsell?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. But first, I'd just like to thank you. I know it's you, and then just a handful of other just leading, consultants and advisors that are out there and dealers that have been at the forefront of talking about first-party data and educating the trade. So really, hats off to you. And again, I know that you have a good cohort of other leaders in the space and dealers that are there. I would say that as it relates to some of the key learnings, Brian, is after spending about 25 years in auto, I was excited to spend some time away from auto. And as you mentioned, I went to a company that worked exclusively with consumer packaged good companies. So companies like Procter & Gamble or Coca-Cola or PepsiCo, et cetera. And in many regards, there's a lot of similarities between retail automotive and retail, I would call it sort of non-automotive. And really, the key thing was impressed upon me when I made that leap was this mantra of really focusing in on your first party data, focusing in on your customers. You would hear time and time again that it costs 5 times as much to reactivate someone that's a lapsed customer. And it would take 10 times as much to cost in terms of marketing to get someone that you need to acquire or prospect. And that is something that has made CPG companies very efficient, effective, is they realize that the best way to avoid over-investing in either customer acquisition and or to reactivate someone that has lapsed is to focus on your first-party data. Now, the difference is that if you are a Walmart or a Walgreens or a Best Buy or a Target, or quite frankly, even think of any hospitality or travel, is that you have that first-party data in spades. You have that point of sale, which is their POS system, which in automotive, it's the DMS system. You also have a CRM system. So in many cases, they all use Salesforce.com. And so these two main systems were able to easily work with each other to develop both the marketing acumen as well as the data to ensure that they're delivering the right message to the right medium and in the right manner. Which was driving massive market efficiency as well as improving gross profit and customer loyalty. And that was something that I had seen that retail non-automotive has been doing for 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 years before I had the opportunity to move over and help out with Outsell.
I credit you, John, for actually pointing me in the direction of customer data platforms, first-party data management. We stayed in touch, and you were like, Brian, I am just blown away how efficient marketing is outside of automotive, how they're really valuing first-party data. And I remember you telling me, Brian, you should really look into this because this would be the next breakthrough in automotive retail. And yet it didn't surprise me that you chose Outsell as your re-entry point because that company has been a pioneer in using machine learning, AI on first-party data and tracking consumer engagement. So you are my inspiration. And the other day I saw you make a comment about sold price. And I don't know if a lot of our listeners understand that connection between sold price and modern day automotive retail, but how's that story tie into, say, what we would call a consumer engagement platform, which is enabling marketing from a consumer data platform?
Well, first off, Brian, high praise, and the feeling is mutual. And again, I had the great opportunity to, when I was asking around, asking you and asking other people that I just absolutely respect in this space, whether it's Alex Vetter at Cars.com, or a handful of other just great leaders, is that people were pointing to Outsell, Mike Wethington, and the company that he built. And as you mentioned, you're absolutely right in the sense that if you were part of chat and natural language processing, it really allowed you to catapult and get into AI in a fast way. And Outsell was one of the leaders in that space, which then continued to evolve and get into the customer engagement platform, the customer data platform, that it is a leader in the automotive space today. Now, getting back to Saul Price, Saul Price is an interesting individual that I actually hadn't heard of until I left automotive. And he really is the father of retail, particularly wholesale retailers. He founded a company in the mid-50s called FedMart. And he was absolutely the inspiration for so much of what Sam Walton from Walmart did. He was working underneath him was a gentleman by the name of Jim Senecal, who eventually went on to create Costco, and eventually one of Saul Price's companies merged with Costco. But yet Saul Price was influential in helping build Home Depot, as well as all traditional retailers. And really, at the end of it, what Saul Price did, and if you think about your Costco experience, is that they created first-party data. So they created the membership. But in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when you really didn't have a POS or DMS system, or you didn't really have a CRM, but what you could do is you could then append a transaction and do it towards a customer ID. And really what Saul Price's genius was that carried through to modern retail is that they cared passionately about engaging the customer, their customers, and their best customers with the correct and personalized message. And they cared just insanely about how to ensure that you're staffing the right people to engage with those customers, and that you're stocking the shelves with the products that your best customers will actually engage and buy in. And again, this gets back to what Saul was convinced about, which is that it costs 5 times as much to try to reactivate a lapsed customer, and 10 times as much to try to acquire a new customer. So why don't you use data to then do the best job you can to create an affinity program and to make sure that you have the best experiences and best marketing to your existing customers. And in fact, probably the best way to look at this is, to this day, is that everyone would have done really well if they would have bought Costco stock over the last 10, 15, 20 years. In fact, it's Charlie Munger's and Warren Buffett's one of their favorite stocks. And yet, to this day, Costco spends $0 on acquisition marketing. No one will remember a Costco commercial because they don't have them. But what they do invest considerably is ensuring that they understand who their customers are, and they're working, around the clock to ensure that they're delivering the right message to the right customers at the right time, and ensuring that both from a staff perspective and an inventory perspective, that they are buying the right cars that their best customers are acquiring.
It sounds very familiar to my conversation with Mike Wethington, the founder of Outsell, when he first introduced his platform and his vision of ingesting the DMS data and then having regularly scheduled outreach to the consumer, registering that data, updating their profile, understanding when to send out messages based on their visit to the website or when their service was due, or a recall or a lease renewal was coming up. And I know that Outsell has done some really breakthrough work with Toyota and some of the other OEMs. For dealers who are not familiar with Outsell's consumer engagement platform. How would you describe it? If you had 2 minutes walking up a staircase or in an elevator and a dealer says, hey, what does Outsell do different than the marketing agencies that I use today? How would you answer that?
Yeah, great question, Brian. And you're right, Mike was visionary and continues to be so at Outsell. So very blessed to have his leadership there. And at the end of the day, we also learn from our customers, and we're very focused on ensuring. So our innovator board, which I know, Brian, you presented to last NADA, and we have great members, whether it's the Germain organization or Oxmoor or Group One, that are all part of that innovator board. It really helps us continue to evolve our product roadmap. And to answer your question, is that Outsell, similar to what Saul Price does, focuses on three areas in helping our dealer customers. First and foremost, we help them with their overall increases in marketing efficiency and effectiveness. So what does that mean? Is that if a dealership has an agency, we can help that agency become more effective and efficient. And we do that with a couple great use cases that we can jump into. So number one is we help their marketing spend and teams become more efficient and effective. Number two is we help the dealerships improve their retention and loyalty. And number three is that we help improve their overall gross, the dealership's overall gross profit. I know this year has been a year with inventory rising, interest rates rising, and gross profit going down. And our dealers are having their best year on record. And part of that just gets back to, Brian, as you mentioned in your conversations with Mike over the years, is that if you are using AI to then send automated messages and delivering the right message to the right person at the right time, you actually create tremendous marketing efficiency. And it's not just about the AI that's driving these automatic responses. It's the ability to do on-demand campaigns that then supplement. And so we have some key on-demand campaigns, whether that's service on demand, which we just launched, or whether it's equity, or whether it's move a model, or whether it's the ability to boost cars. And all of those our performance coaches will work with the dealerships on to help solve their problems. And if you are using first-party data to understand who your customers are and then to solve those problems, you'll see definitively that you'll help those organizations improve their marketing team spend and efficiency, as well as overall improve their customer loyalty, and then lastly, help their overall gross profit.
You know, John, one of the things that I try to communicate to dealers, because they really don't think about it, is that when there's 3 or 4 cooks in the kitchen, you can't control cadence. You can't control the frequency of emails. You can't control the frequency of direct mail. You can't control the frequency of phone calls. And yet, we know that having no cadence could lead to a very disruptive customer experience. Yet, if a dealer uses Outsell for their sales, marketing, customer retention, service marketing, recalls, or any vehicle activation campaigns, since it's coming out of one platform, there's the ability to throttle or pace communications. Can you talk a little bit about this idea of respecting the consumer and the pace and frequency by which we send messages to them?
Yeah, so I think, Brian, to build upon that, and you did a great job of articulating what the value prop is when you can understand how to deliver the right message, and importantly, that you're not just blasting the customer. So again, you think through that your experiences outside of auto as a customer shapes your expectations within auto. Too often, if you think about challenging use cases within auto, you're getting that service oil change repair on a new EV that you just bought, or you're getting multiple and different messages from the OEM that's different from one dealership as part of a dealer group that you might have serviced the car from, and another one that you bought the car from. And it actually, at the end of the day, you might not even own that car anymore. And so just using extensive data to ensure that you're communicating to that relevant customer, and then you're not over communicating, because what we generally find is, even though we know every month we're processing now close to over 54 million consumer records and understanding where those customers are, effectively, you don't need to continue to over-index on sort of one medium. You can layer in and figure out, does social work? And if social is working, then may not send out that email or direct mail piece. Or conversely, if direct mail is working really well, you may not want to inundate them with more than a couple of emails. And one of the great innovations that Mike and the product team, led by Gary Marcotte, have done is that propensity to open emails. And so, again, one of the challenges that the auto industry faces, which I know Saul Price would really struggle with, is that, you look at a system of record like a CRM, is that sadly, it's now built mainly as a system of record as opposed to a communications medium. And you can do the same thing, whether it is for service reminders or even sort of the OEM sending out their information, is that these emails are not being delivered, as well as they're not being effective in understanding where that customer is. And then the last layer to kind of dig into is that yes, we will work with a single point store, but where our sweet spot is with dealer groups. And there are a lot of specific dealer group messages. And what we continue to find is that when you are trying to engage and connect and educate and work with your customers, that's the best time you're going to get incremental RO or service repair or a warranty recall or a new or used vehicle sale. And it's not always about just unleashing the dam and having the waters flood into a certain area. Having that cadence, having that sophistication, using AI to ensure that you're not inundating the customer is oftentimes the best way to communicate to those customers.
John, for dealers who are listening, especially dealer groups, I want to make a distinction. You and I have talked about this. How does Outsell work in an ecosystem where some of the more sophisticated dealer groups are building a CDP or a data lake? And, one of the things that I love is that Outsell is collaborative, meaning when you work with dealer groups, yes, you can deliver direct mail and email and social or SEM campaigns and other channels, but it's collaborative. So even if a dealer has built a sophisticated CDP, they still need to find a partner that can tap in, take that data and activate it. And then for a smaller group, maybe somebody with 3, 5, or 10 stores, they don't have a budget or the bandwidth for a CDP. You could do everything for them. Talk about this vision of Outsell being the most sophisticated data activation partner, the best engagement platform that knows automotive inside and out.
Yeah, Brian, to your credit, in the paper that you released, I think it was the beginning of this year, you did a great job of articulating that there's the data component to it, and then there's that marketing activation component or the customer engagement platform component to it. And we can play, and we do play effectively and efficiently in both. However, one of the things that I learned going outside of automotive is the importance of not building walled gardens around yourself, not having silos. Brian, you've done a great job, as with others, of articulating and leading the space about how an individual dealership may unknowingly have 5, 10, 15 different customer data platforms. It's just they're not talking to each other, not engaging with each other. And so if a dealership has invested in their own technology, or if a dealership has got outside and are using a company, whether that's Telium or Treasure Data or Axiom or any other leading CDPs, then Outsell has invested considerable resources and innovation to ensure that we can ingest that data, activate it on it based on either the agency that the dealer's working with or the internal agency or even the dealership or even in an automated way, then deliver it. Because having really good data in and of itself is important, but not being able to activate it or to be able to activate it is actually the most important thing. And that's the area that is our secret sauce and our expertise.
John, as I've talked to dealers, it's really a, kind of a toss-up on what they tell me their challenges are. Stellantis dealers seem to have a lot of inventory sitting on their lot, maybe a Honda or a Toyota dealer, not so much. And so you need to have different levers to pull. And so I'm going to ask a broad question. I know it's hard to answer, but I like asking more challenging questions when we're on our interviews because dealers would ask the same thing. What's one thing that Outsell could do today, a campaign strategy or messaging that could help them move the needle right away?
Yes. So let's use our recently launched service on demand product. It is AI driven, so we can go in and we can then figure out. I'll give you a good use case. Is that Ford is trying to has tied in co-op into their mobile services division, and they're focusing a lot on that. Well, dealerships are struggling with, well, how do I communicate and which customers do I really want to activate for mobile services? And Outsell has a couple of solutions that can help, in this case, the Ford dealers. One of them is a service on demand component. And then within the service on demand is our own customer value. So Outsell has looked at our 54 million customers, looked at the last 17 years, and predicted what's the next 3 years value on a per person basis, which are the best customers, going back to Saul Price, that a dealership should care passionately about. So it is that sort of lifetime customer value, but looking at it in a very practical 3-year forward based on historical data. And so now we enable our Ford dealerships to go in and see who their best customers are, and then do a service on demand campaign just to those customers. And then to your earlier point about how we are, we're not an agency, but we can support either the dealerships in-house or their own agencies. If they want to then send a direct mail campaign, they can either do it through us or their agency. If they want to actually do a social campaign to those customers, they can do it through us or their own agency. And then we have many of use cases that then help the dealership become more effective and efficient. That is, one example. Another example that we use is that dealerships will come, regardless of the make, and talk about how their zone factory rep came in and said, these are the customers that just came in that you did not activate a recall. And the dealership say, well, they give me a list, they give me a manifest. What am I going to do with this? I have fewer people today than I had 5 years ago. I'm asking to sell more cars this year than I did 2 years ago, just to sort of keep pace with gross profit. What am I going to do with this static list? Well, again, you can now do a few things, but you can use your performance coach at Outsell, or you can go in and you can identify who those customers are within our platform and then send on-demand campaigns. And all these areas allow dealerships to solve individual dealer problems. So we are not we do not advocate that it's recommended just to set it and forget it. There are many different unique ways for a dealership to, if they want to, or if they want to partner with their agency and or with us, to then figure out what are some of the ways to then help by using data to help solve their problems, whether in this case it's for lapse warranty, or if it is in the Ford case with mobile service. There's a handful of use cases that we really want to continue to demonstrate to our dealer customers as well as our prospects, so they can continue to evolve and grow their business across the board.
John, there's been a lot of buy-sell activity, and I've been talking to dealers, especially those who have a growing enterprise, that I believe in the future, valuations of dealerships will also start factoring in how they've managed first-party data, how they're activating first-party data, meaning the blue sky number that they're asking for. If I walked into a 10-store dealer group and they had their data in disarray and 4 different marketing agencies and no centralization, or if I walked into a 10-store group that has unified their customer data, is updating that customer data for data hygiene, is timing, activating, and building lifetime value and retention, and can demonstrate that, to me, that is one of the reasons why dealers need to really think about taking action now and not waiting. What's your thoughts about the value of an organization that values their first-party data when it comes to sell?
Yeah, Brian, I think again you're leading the charge on just understanding what that importance is. And without, we have 1,800 dealer customers that we work with. We work with roughly 60% of the top dealer groups in the country. And by and large, what they are talking about is exactly what you just mentioned, which is that they are looking at vehicles to do a dealerships to do a buy sell with, and they're understanding how effective they are in using their own data, their own first party data. And they have found that when those dealers are not using that data effectively, that they can go in and pretty quickly have a great turnaround story, which will then help them to get a better return on their investment, quicker return on their investment. And so yes, data management is something that is a competitive advantage. And Brian, you've been a long proponent of the local dealers, and for that, thank you. And whether you're a single point Toyota store or you own 15 Toyota dealerships, the difference between auto retail and non-autos is there's no group discounts or volume discounts as there are in so many other parts of the retail. And so in a world where a single point Toyota store is paying for the same wholesale car as a large group that has many Toyota stores, a competitive difference is in that data. And you can quickly understand that if you're engaging and understanding who your customers are and what's delivering the right message at the right time, you are much more effective in making your marketing team and spend more efficient, of helping your dealerships overall gross profit, and then helping improve your overall loyalty and retention.
John, I'd like to ask a practical question, because when we talk about first-party data management, dealers are familiar with their CRM and DMS, and they generally have an idea, okay, I need a third tool, a third platform to really manage the customer, make sure the address is right, the email address, the phone number, that I'm showing they own the right vehicle, and the DMS and the CRM was not meant for that. Okay, so let's just say that they get that piece, that Outsell's customer engagement platform would help them unify their data, activate their data. So let's just pick a 5-star group. They sign up. How long does it take for you to ingest, clean, and then be able to start activating? And is it something that they see right away, or is it, hey, the engine has to learn from behaviors and communications, and we start to see a first jump at 90 days and a second lift at 6 months? What kind of expectations does the onboarding and activation look like in a general way?
Yeah, great question, Brian. Generally speaking, it's less than 2 months from the time of signature to when the system is starting to learn, and then it learns incrementally on a daily basis. And the return on investment can be seen, incrementally from really out of the gates. A lot of that is also dependent on like how much of the on-demand campaigns that the dealership, their agency, or in the Outsell, customer service success teams do. But you can start to see some of the immediate benefits right out of the gate. But it does build and it does take time. And what we've seen is that the return on investment for a dealership that's been with us for 1 year is impressive. And if they've been with us for 5 years or 10 years, it continues to grow and improve. But there are also various different variables for that. But I want to go back to your original question about sort of how long does it take, and if you look at the CRM, I think it's important to look at what's your deliverability of your CRM in terms of delivering messages. And the problem that I know, Brian, you and I've talked about is that some CRM companies deliver in the 60, maybe high 60%, are even delivered to the email box. There's a lot of AI that goes into it. There's a lot of understanding of what's the best way to send those messages. And then we look at the DMS, so much of the DMS is just faulty records. The same customer may be listed 3 or 4 times. They may not own the car. There may not be disposal data. And so you need to be looking at how is the CDP or the customer engagement platform, how are they looking at and removing and providing just that sort of that clean list? And in doing so, then if a dealer does want to go out of their DMS to send direct mail or give lists to their CDP, their business development center, they'll have a much better shot to do that. And so again, it's really fun once you can get that data cleaned and back. What we've generally found is that the average dealership has about 60% of the records than they would have thought if they would just look at their CRM and DMS data and then made an educated guess. And a lot of that's just using the data that's around us, but then applying it and then applying that hygiene and making sure that it's up and running. I know these are sort of fancy terms that I just threw around, but the reality is that this is also the normal way that whether you're renting a car, buying an airline ticket, doing going to stay with kind of a Westin or high-end hotel, they're looking at the same level of data and then trying to figure out who you are as a customer, what level of loyalty and rewards they should provide you, and what's the right message, whether that's direct mail, whether that's text, whether that's email, to ensure that you're opening it and ensuring that you're understanding their messages that they're trying to send to you.
I know that is the case, John, because, there are periods of the year where I'm very busy traveling and I mostly book with Marriott. But there are some times where I'm not booking, and they know that. And they are sending me out a little incentive. Hey, extra points if you book something in this period. And I'm sure that this is not a general thing that goes out, because I don't see many offers when I'm booking, new hotels every week. And this, of course, is powered by the CDP. And of course, when I check in or call, once they know who I am, they thank me for being an Ambassador Elite member. They recognize my loyalty. They provide some type of reward that's commensurate with my level, and you feel appreciated. And as stupid as it sounds, the free breakfast or the extra points or whatever they offer is, well, it's a nice thing. And it shows that they're paying attention to their first party data. For the dealers who are listening today, this is one of the interviews in our podcast series leading up to the Modern Retailing Conference. And one of the major themes at the conference this year is elevating the customer experience. And that's exactly what Outsell does. Yes, you can hire one company for SEO, one company for social, another company for paid search, another company for OTT, another service marketing company for direct mail. But when you really step back and say, is that the best customer experience? Can I control cadence, message? Is it updated in real time or near real time? Or are they working off lists that were cut 30 days ago, 60 days ago? Am I modeling my data based on someone else's activity or the activity on my website? These are all really important questions to ask when you make the commitment to elevate the customer experience. And that's exactly what Outsell does. The platform's activation channels have been growing each year, and it's not an all or nothing. It's not a closed platform. So I love the fact that dealers can still do some things in-house and outsource some things to find the right balance of internal marketing tasks versus external tasks, which Outsell can do much better. John, it's been a pleasure having you on today's podcast, and I'm looking forward to your keynote at the show. What if somebody isn't going to MRC, doesn't have the opportunity to have a coffee or a glass of wine with you? What's the best way for them to set up a demo and to understand what the customer engagement platform benefits are for their dealership?
Yeah, well, first again, Brian, thank you for what you've done for the industry, for all your dealers, for being a champion of the dealer trade. So thank you for that. For any dealer that is not attending MRC, they can either reach out to me. So it's just John.Clavadetscher at Outsell.com. I know Clavadetscher is a kind of a mouthful. Or you can talk to any of your Outsell, either your customer success reps or your sales executives. Or go to Outsell.com to then fill out a form, and we'll get back to you quickly. But and then my cell phone number is 312-543-4834. Anyone can always reach out to me. And then I like to sort of end it, in addition to thanking you and what you've done for the trade, is just, tie this back into Saul Price. Saul Price, to your last point, Brian, knew who his top 100 customers are. And I think it's important for all dealerships to reflect on, do they know who their top customers are? Do they know who their top 100 customers are? And do they have a way to communicate with them and win their business? I was recently visiting and onboarding the Fred Beans group, which is a group I know you're familiar with, Brian,
That's
in the Philadelphia area. And we were talking about onboarding and going into our customer value, understanding who your top customers are. And Mr. Beans was there, as long as his executive team. And he stopped me and he said, John, when I bought my first Ford store and mortgaged my future and took big risks to enter into the space back in I think it was 75, when it was just one Ford store, he said that he did a few things well: hired people with integrity, had good processes, made sure that the place was respectable, clean, and had the right standards. But he said the other thing he did is that he went through the ledger and painstakingly identified who his top 100 customers are, and then instructed his service department as well as sales that if any of these top 100 customers come into the store, that they were to notify him. And then Mr. Beans would stop what he was doing and then engage with those customers. In a world where we have so much technology, so much first party data, it's almost lost about how important those basics are. And Mr. Beans went on to say that in order to get big, you have to think small. And he was very appreciative of this technology because it allows him, not just at an individual dealership level, but actually at a group level, to know who his top 100 customers are. And this allows him to go back to the basics so they continue to act locally to then grow globally. So I do believe the Fred Beans organization, has, well over 20, if not closer to 30 stores, to date, as they continue to grow and live by that mantra of getting big by acting and thinking small.
Well, that is great advice to end this conversation, because we could talk about first party data all day long, but it's the end result of retaining, activating, and growing your client base through referrals, through happy customer experiences. We all do that when we have an outstanding customer experience. It's time we bring that to automotive. If this is the first time you're listening to a podcast, you should know that there are dozens of interviews with industry leaders, technology platforms, and people that are working hard to transform automotive retail. And of course, Outsell is one of those companies. We want to encourage you to please listen to all the interviews, because they will equip your dealership with new tools, new insights to sell more cars in a digital age. Those of you who are coming to the Modern Retailing Conference, I'll see you in just a few days in beautiful Palm Beach. Until then, I'll catch you next time on another podcast interview.